Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Director Swagel. Appreciate your leadership at CBO and the work of your team. Obviously, CBO is the organization that all members of Congress look to for an even-handed, fair view of where we stand and what things will look like in the future. And you've done, I think, a good job of fielding questions from different perspectives and providing that accurate look for members of Congress. This forecast is a 10-year forecast, which you're forecasting at the end of this 10 years will be at 116% debt to GDP, which will be a record high. You've also looked in other reports and at various times throughout the year at a longer-term forecast, up to 30 years. Can you explain to us what debt to GDP looks like in those forecasts at the end of a 30-year period?
No, thank you. And in the 10-year outlook at the very back, we have a box that gives a preview of that 30-year report, but it's something that we're working on now and we'll have out in the spring. And the challenge that the high deficits continue out into the future, and therefore debt mounts and goes north of 150% of GDP by the end of that 30-year horizon.
Over 150. One of your reports, I think, had up to close to 180%.
That's right. It's getting close to that.
It's still about right. Almost getting close to double, which is something that every member of Congress ought to be concerned about. Correct?
That's right.
Can you tell us a little bit, like it's not sustainable, I think you've talked about that. What's a sort of a best case scenario? It's going to be rising interest rates that are going to impact the ability of the government to fund anything. And worst case scenario would be what?
No, that's right.
Based on what's happened in history.
Right. So net interest payments, the rising net interest payments will crowd out other activities, other choices that you as policymakers have. And that the worst case scenario are risks of instability, of financial instability, if global investors doubt the willingness of the United States to pay its debt without giving in to high inflation.
And that would be a sovereign debt crisis.
That would be a debt crisis or an inflation crisis.
Yeah, which would have massive impacts on every American. Do you agree with that?
That's right.
And in fact, we've seen countries fail in similar situations throughout history. Do you agree with that?
I do.
Yeah. So you're the independent voice telling every member of Congress that this is really an existential crisis to the future of the country. Is that correct?
No, I think that's fair. And as you said, I would look at other countries that have failed this challenge.
Do you think the American people understand what we're faced with?
I mean, I'd like to think there's broad awareness that we face a serious problem. The difficulty is finding the way to do this.
The purpose, and I'm sorry, I'm doing this quickly, but the purpose of a debt commission, I believe, one of the main purposes is to really explain this to the American people. Do you see value in that?
No, I do, explaining the problem and then saying here are the range of possible solutions.
Yes, which is exactly what we're hoping to set out to do with the debt commission. Can you explain just for a second what your projections are? And the ranking member talked about Social Security and Medicare as being programs that have been paid into and so in some sense earned. But what will happen with those programs in less than 10 years? If nothing is done?
No, that's the challenge, that our projections now have the Social Security Trust Fund exhausted by the end of the budget window, and then benefits for all Americans would be reduced, in a sense, by more than 20%.
So literally in 9 years, people can expect they will not receive their Social Security benefits if Congress does not take some action.
That's right. Under current law, there would be not enough resources to pay the promised benefits of Social Security.
Yeah, I think it's important for the American people to hear that from you, and I think it's really important that if we are successful in putting together this fiscal commission, that we really go out and explain to the American people that what we really have here is a math problem. Mm-hmm. It's potentially a political problem as well, but if nothing is done, every single American will be impacted in the short term, within 9 years, every single American who's accessing Social Security, and potentially dramatic income or impact to current Americans, certainly to future generations, if we don't change course. Do you think we still have time to act, or is this something that will be difficult to resolve?
It's, the challenge is knowing when that, sort of that period of crisis comes and things could be stable, and then, interest rates spike, inflation spikes, and that's the challenge.
Yeah, thank you.